Hello, my friends. Great love to you. Thank you for joining me here on The Gathering. I am David Ault. So, as I was in the stillness this morning, I was thinking and reflecting upon what is the ultimate goal? What is the most common desire? And I think sometimes wherever we are standing in our awareness, we might say security, love. But more and more, I gravitate to that answer being freedom. Freedom meaning not external freedom, but interior freedom. And what's the difference? To me, an interior freedom or peace of mind is an unwavering existence in spite of whatever is taking place in the outside world. An interior freedom, a calm that is fully alive and fully influential with regards to the way in which we are, even in the ultimate chaos, even in the storm, even in the warring and the inequality that is so much a part of the human existence. And when we read or study or attempt to emulate sages and spiritual teachers or gurus, whatever your path is, that seem to exemplify that, what is a way that you and I can have more of that? How do we gravitate more to the unwavering inner peace and stillness and freedom? Again, not external freedom, but internal freedom. And so this question came to me, and it was, with regards to internal freedom, if nothing changed for you and you remained where you are with that, where you are in relationship to that for the remainder of your life till you die, are you okay with that? Are you good with that? And if you're answering, yeah, I think I am, then stay with me and send some of your energy to the screen for those of us who feel like there's more to unravel and untangle in order to experience a greater degree of that. So if where you are in relationship with peace of mind, unwavering peace of mind, no matter the circumstance, with interior freedom, regardless of what happens in the world, where you are right now does not change until the day that you die. Are you good with that? So I'll just answer for myself. There's too many times that I waver. And I'm not saying that from being punitive or incriminating. I'm saying that just observationally with regards to I'm acknowledging my humanness. I'm acknowledging that there are vulnerable points. There are activated themes in my life, let's say about limitation or fear of not having enough, that get triggered from time to time. And they signal something in me that tells me that there isn't a deep rootedness with regards to peace of mind. That if the velocity of the winds of change are strong enough, then that overtakes me and I feel absent or separated from that kind of peace of mind. And so naturally, I want to become more deeply rooted. And so this really is about, if you share that with me, if there is a longing for an unwavering freedom, regardless of human evolution and chaos and noise and our inhumanity towards one another, then what might we do? What can we do? And ironically, I'm starting to see that it isn't so much about the doing, it's about observing the being. And so a couple of things with regards to that. If what we're striving for is the revealing of that unwavering freedom, what can we do? So I go back to one of my greatest spiritual teachers and greatest spiritual instructions, and that was in the writings of Ernest Holmes. There is a particular transcription of a talk that he gave at a retreat center in California called Asilomar. And that talk is affectionately known as the Sermon by the Sea, because that particular retreat center is right there on the Pacific Ocean and is quite beautiful. And the theme of what he says in that talk is really about that unwavering peace. But there's a particular sentence in that talk that still to this day I pivot back to, and I go, how can I be more of that? And so it's this is the sentence from the Sermon by the Sea by Ernest Holmes. He says, find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, another exalted human being. That sentence really lingers. It sticks with me because I think it has something to do with that interior freedom. I think it has something to do with the sustainability of a peace. Find me one person who is for something and against nothing. So as poetic and as beautiful as that sounds, it feels very much in opposition to what the world teaches us with regards to advocacy, to safety, to overcoming persecution. And I think that this is where what Ernest Holmes is saying isn't in opposition to that at all. What it's saying is that there is an activation that must take place in the interior of the person. And if that activation takes place, we will begin to experience more of the wisdom and the knowledge and the unconditional love that a master such as Jesus experienced. And if you and I have studied enough about some of the things that are revealed about Jesus, he wasn't a pacifist. He was very much a conscientious disruptor, but there was something developed within him that was unshakable. And there must have been choices and studies and interactions and practices that allowed that unmovable knowing to be fully exposed, to be fully activated. And so when we say, find me one person who is for something and against nothing, the external humanness wants to start to bring caveats and excuses and reasons why that is not valid. And so we muddy it. We get it muddled with the idea that then that means that we're just roll over and take it. And that's not what it means. The ultimate form of activism, the ultimate form of social justice is the activation of that solidity of peace, that solidity in knowing that all is well, and that I am sort of soldiering, if you will, that particular knowing into an arena of forgetfulness. And so when he says, find me one person who is for something, meaning that there is no fear in the loss of the divine design, that I don't have to waste my time arguing and pressing and fighting against anything. And I completely fulfill myself in the quest for something. And if I'm able to do that, And if I don't become seduced in trying to condemn others out of my own burdened soul, my own burdened forgetfulness, you see, in the condemnation of other people, there is a momentary relief where we take the condemnation off of ourselves. And we're just transferring it. We're just projecting it onto other people. And it gives us just a momentary bit of relief. But that is not lasting or sustainable. Then we have to keep finding other things to condemn and other things to condemn and other things to condemn. There are people, God bless them, who exist on social media. And if you look at the history of their personal page or their feed, every single day is just voluminous things about being against something. And so that's a momentary, unconscious action to procrastinate doing the work on one's self. Let me talk about and let me mock and let me make fun of and let me rail against all of these other things because it gives me the chance to not do my own work. So find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of their soul. And he says, and I will have found another savior. I will have found another embodiment of that which is a Christic being, Jesus the Christ, an exalted human being. And so when I go back to the question of, am where I at in my relationship with internal peace, with freedom, if where I am at is where I will be when I die, am I okay with that? And I still have work to do. So I get to practice what it looks like to be for something and against nothing. Now, that's going to be a sort of big pill to swallow if we look at the world solely from one lens. One lens. And what lens am I referring to? I'm referring to the singular dimensional lens. If I think that Earth is the end all be all, if I think that this plane of existence is the end all be all, then I will never really be able to achieve what Ernest Holmes is asking me to examine, to be for something and against nothing. It's virtually impossible because this plane of form is dualistic. It is built upon being against something. It is built upon separation. I've got to be able to expand, go beyond what it is that I see. I've got to consider that there is more going on than meets the physical eye. I've got to be able to expand, be willing to stretch my comprehension, my human limitation of my senses, and be able to consider that there is a multidimensional, that there is an intricate framework of a divine design that is far more than what I am able to digest by what I'm doing from the day to day. I've got to be able to consider that. In my consideration of that, in my willingness of that, I will lean more then into the practice and the availability of what Ernest Holmes has talked about. And so when I think about, well, then how do I do that? I labeled my practice the gospel of anyway. The gospel of anyway. It's my personal gospel of how I can lean more into being for something and against nothing. How I can become more in harmony with the infallible freedom that is inside of me. So I take great inspiration and have for many, many years for something called the paradoxical commandments. Sometimes it's just a poem and it's called Anyway by Kent Keith. And there are many parts to that very famous inspirational poem that says, people are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. You start to get the gist of the paradox of the action of the doing. It's like the doing then becomes not to gain notoriety, not to gain love from an affirmation from the outside world, not for acclaim, and not for any kind of ego-driven security. But we do these things regardless of what happens in the external world. We do them anyway. And that has always been very resonant for me. And it has helped me in my path of becoming more in tune with the infallible nature of freedom. So, for example, my foundation is called Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. And over the past 20 years, we have been engaged in bringing global education to emergent countries and children in very vulnerable situations, such as slums and villages. And there have been things that we have built. There have been programs that have been launched and initiated. And sometimes, whether it is external government or vulnerable economy, or even such things as COVID, myriads of things have come in and threatened the stability of our programs, have pushed things back. We're looking at a situation in the government of Cambodia right now where villagers are being uprooted from the village where we have built one of our schools. And we see that there is an impermanence in the human world. And if I knew what was transpiring today, would I have not gone back? Would the whole board of Kaleidoscope Child Foundation or the donors not done what they had done if we knew that what we had created would someday have to be abandoned? We would do it anyway. You start to see where I'm going with this? And so it isn't that we do things from a certainty that they're going to be everlasting. We do them because it's ours to do in the moment. And so it's like your creativity. Have we become so bogged down in the expression of our creativity that we only do it if it's associated with income? Or are we creating because we must create? We create anyway, regardless of how it's received in the external world. So I've been living my life more and more and more that way in these advancing years. And I call it the gospel of anyway. And I stop myself and I reference it and I go, David, is your action right now in harmony with your gospel of anyway? Or are you doing this to seek validation or some sense of false security? And so it brings me back into the awareness of the purity of the intent, the purity of the creation, the purity of the conversation, the purity of the decision. And so the gospel of anyway says, I'm not doing these things solely for earthly gain. I'm doing them because they are in alignment with the greater communal freedom of what it is that we're all here to be and to share in and to uncover and experience. And so there is the before something and against nothing. There is the gospel of anyway. And then if anything can be associated with doing, it would be this. It would be preparation. Preparation. Preparation is equal parts human doing and human being. I want to prepare myself to be more in harmony with that infallible freedom. How do I do that? I take the things that are my vulnerabilities, my wounding, my long-standing themes that promote separation in my mind. And instead of busying myself and ignoring them, I turn to them. I create relationship with it so that I can become more and more curious as to why do I continue to do these things? I prepare myself for examination, for self-reflection. I prepare myself to let old fears dissolve. I prepare for belief systems to crumble. And I do so in a way from curiosity, receptivity, ownership, owning my faults, and becoming more and more willing to not act as sort of a police system of other people's actions. Police myself instead of policing others. Be more curious with regards to why and what I resist. So preparation is preparing the reception of the desire, of the longing for the feeling, preparing myself to receive and feel the long-lasting nature of freedom. All of these things are sort of tools or personal things to journal, to sit down with. What is it that I need to do? What do I need to prepare within myself to have a more faithful, unwavering union with freedom? Because it's up to me. It's not up to freedom. Freedom just is. What do I need to do to expand and become more sure-footed in walking the gospel of anyway? And what do I need to begin to look for or examine or be with in order to develop more of being for something and against nothing? All of those things contribute to the greater reality of being in harmony and in relationship with peace of mind and with freedom. This is the stuff of mastery. I think this is the stuff that when you and I have exhausted all other ways of trying to grasp at freedom, the personal, the freedom that we're told will come from the acquisition of things. We have to exhaust all of that until we can get to this point where we can now have a reset, where we can begin to say, okay, I've done all of those things. I've tried to find freedom through securing other people, through trying to find love and validation from someone. We got to exhaust all of that in order to get to this point. And if you're at this point, as I am, then let's practice these three things together. May you find that thing, that practice, or something within the discussion that will help remove one more veil of forgetfulness so that you can feel that inner freedom, that long-lasting nature of peace. God bless.